Chapter 10. My name is Harkness. Dr. Martin returned towards morning, stiff and tired from the constant hours in the saddle, and Kittering had been dozing in a chair. The girl was asleep in her bunk. He listened with tight shut lips to the story of the fight and shook his head.
3 men dead, Jim,
he said soberly.
That's bad business.
Helen awoke as the doctor began to take off Kittering's hastily applied compression.
Break this open again didn't do you any good either, young lady,
he grumbled. Helen glanced up at him and set her lips against the pain of the handling.
Sorry, Doc,
she replied.
Next time I'll just let them shoot Jim.
Wouldn't be much loss,
grunted the doctor and turned to the puncher, and he ordered brusquely.
Let me bandage that wrist, and then we'll have to bury those 3, and you better get out of here and see if you can pick up Slocum's trail. I'll go and stay here until this whole miserable business is finished. Don't worry, I brought my rifle.
Kittering was worn and tired from the night's vigil and the fight, but they spent the next couple of hours removing the ghastly remainders of the siege.
See if you can find some trace of Slocum, and then get back here,
Doc Martin said.
Somebody's going to start wondering why those boys didn't come back last night.
Kittering saddled Patch and then went in to say goodbye to the girl. Remembering how she had kissed him before he went out the night before, he stood beside her bunk and hesitated a moment, and then bent quickly to find her lips waiting for him.
Be careful, Jim,
she begged.
And bring Dad back, please.
I sure will, he promised, grinning suddenly and shyly, and then went. Then he was jogging down the valley to pick up the cold trail. He already knew that Slocum hadn't gone up the hill in spite of his announcement that he was going there. It was obvious that he was heading somewhere else and didn't want Helen to know. The thing to do then was to try and pass first, and if nothing appeared there, to examine the other side of the valley. The trail before him was covered with tracks, and he saw the fresh imprints of Doc Martin's horse coming in, and under them the galloping, widely spaced hoofprints of the 3 riders who had pounded in so arrogantly the day before, and the faintest of all, the prints of a horse's feet who had been trotting easily, and who had not returned. Buried under these were under the more recent ones. Kittering's practiced eye picked them out without little difficulty. The spacing of the tracks told him that Slocum had jogged easily with no expectation of trouble. As he entered the pass, he saw where Slocum's horse was stopped, and the long gashes on the sides of the bank showed where the other horses had scrambled down from both sides to cut in on the trail, and the story was plain. Together, then, the whole group of horses had moved out into the prairie. The trail here was clearer, and Kittering urged Patch forward, and they turned away from the lazy Bar X and then headed towards Needle Butte. Kittering loped along with one eye on the tracks and the other on the horizon. There was no telling where the hard-riding partners of the ranch might turn up, and he didn't care for any surprise party out here in the open. And thus he was not wholly unprepared when, having covered several miles of rolling plain, he mounted a rise and faced a little drama being enacted in the hollow below him. A horse stood there, its reins trailing on the ground, and a little distance away a man bent over the hog-tied figure of a steer. The horse's ears shot up as the rider appeared over the skyline, but the man himself, engrossed in the tousled-up animal before him, didn't see the movement. Kittering drew Patch in quickly, and eased the dancing pony down below the skyline to a point where he could see without exposing too much of himself. He peered over curiously. The stranger had roped and thrown the steer, and now he seemed to be just bending over and examining him, for what purpose Kittering couldn't tell. And whatever the purpose was, he had no time to discover it, for at that moment came a sudden interruption. A group of punchers rode over the skyline, and Kittering saw them check their horses as they took in the little group in the hollow, And then they burst into furious action. 6 shooters appeared and started barking, although they were still out of pistol range, and they spurred down in a charging mass. The stranger leapt up, ran for his horse as the little jets of dirt began erupting into the air, and the pony reared, and he missed his clutch at the reins. And then the frightened animal wheeled and ran, while his owner chased him down desperately. The charging punchers swept down with wild yells, and Kittering's hand, he found, was clasped upon his gun butt. It was plain that the punchers thought that the stranger was a rustler, but there had been no fire, no running iron, and no attempt to meddle with the brand on the steer. Whatever his purpose, he had been merely looking at the animal, not rustling him. Kittering joined forces with the stranger against the lazy Bar X. His rifle sent a shot screaming over the man's head to plow up the ground in front of the charging cowboys, and as though a bomb had exploded amongst them, the group had split and sent flying in all directions. Patch leapt ahead and then tore a full gallop down the slope. Thrusting the rifle into the scabbard, Kittering snatched his rope and built a loop as he came. The stranger ducked as Patch's flying hooves showered him with sand, and the next moment a businesslike rope settled over the stubborn pony's head, and as Patch leaned back on the slack, the stranger leapt forward and was in the saddle like a flash. Lead screamed past them, and all around the sand sprang into the air in furious little puffs. "Time to leave," the stranger said, grinning and showing flashing white teeth in his dark face. He flipped the rope back to Kittering, and the 2 horses swept up out of the hollow in a rolling staccato of hooves. "Although," he panted, "I sure hate to leave that critter all tied up like that. Plumb thoughtless of those hombres, that's what it is." A bullet ripped viciously at his shirt as he spoke, and Kittering twisted in his saddle to look behind. Some of the punchers had rifles, and were beginning to take use of them. "Better keep a fanning and a fogging on her," Kittering said. "I'll give those rannies something to think about." Twisting in his saddle, yet sitting the galloping horse easily, he pumped the lever of his rifle with a rapid hand, and the effect was immediate. A wide gap opened up between them and their pursuers. The stranger grinned at him, showing his even white teeth again. "Name's Harkness," he said, "and I'm sure obliged for your giving a hand with Julius Caesar here. He gets plumb auspicious at the wrong times. Some day I'm sure they're going to have to beat his brains out." "My name's Kettering," the puncher said, grinning back. "I got a tender heart, and I couldn't see you walking away from those he-wolves. Knowing how suspicious they get, I figured they were mistaken your intentions. Seems you got to be mighty careful how you even look at a man's cows around here." Harkness laughed aloud. He seemed not to be the least disturbed by the lead which had been thrown at him, and Kittering eyed him appreciatively, and his glance fell upon the ripped shirt blown outward in the wind of their galloping. Under the fringing edges of the tear metal sparkled, and a gleaming star was pinned to Harkness' undershirt. Kittering turned his eyes front again. So Harkness was a ranger. That meant that his tying up and examining that steer wasn't idle curiosity nor sheer accident. He was here for a purpose or a man. What and whom? Overhead, the ping and the zip of flying lead whined and faltered, and came on again, falling short now, digging into the ground just behind them. "Looks to me like they might be Lewitt as an interest," Kittering said. "Reckon they figure you're scared off now, and they know where they can find me when they need a little gun practice." "Oh, that right?" Harkin glanced at him keenly. "You got all feuding on, do ya?" Kittering's eyes rested upon the ranger's shirt. Mentally he saw the gleaming star under the cloth, and then he raised his eyes to the other's face. "Sorta," he admitted cautiously. "I used to work there, and found out they were fixing to run a man and his daughter off their homestead, which was given to them by the owner of the ranch. It's a doggone queer business," he said, shaking his head. Owner of the ranch gave them the land and told the boys to leave 'em alone. The foreman is bound to get rid of them, and the owner kind of shuts his eyes to it. Your friend happened to be named Slocum? Harkness asked quietly. Kittering eyed him sharply. How do you know? Harkness ignored the question, and they rode on in silence for a few seconds. Then Harkness asked, Does he run any cows? Just a few head. What brand? An H, laying on its side. The ranger nodded. That was one of his cows I was looking at. Looked like some hombre was running an iron to change the H to sort of a W with a double bar across the bottom. You ever see a brand like that? Kittering shook his head. Never did. They rode on, moving easily now. The pounding hoofs beats had died out, and after a few moments, Harkness broke the silence. Well, what do we do now? I guess we best just turn and head for the homestead, I guess, Kittering replied. I'm pretty sure that bunch has got Slocum, and they're holding him someplace, trying to make him give up the homestead. That's another reason they didn't chase us. Long as they got Slocum, there's no point in getting more men killed driving us out. They'll use him as a weapon against us, I suspect. Well, seems that we better locate him. Yeah, but not right now. That whole gang will be just waiting for us to ride up. We got to do something to create a disturbance, to break them up so that there won't be so many guarding them, and then we'll have a better chance of getting them away. Seems like you talk like you know where he is. Well, I know where he isn't. That's something. Where isn't he? He isn't at the ranch because that would let Bates in on it, and that'd be too risky. They're holding him someplace else, and there ain't so many places to look. But we'll have to wait for a while now. We'll head on back to Slocum's place. Helen and Doc Martin are back there alone. End of chapter 10.